What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Escalate podcast. Now, I know this intro looks a little bit different. I'm actually sat at my computer this time. I have donated my desk and kind of studio area back there to my wife, Paulina. She has started work at Texas A&M being a doctor, being a veterinarian, which is so exciting, and I could not be more proud of her. So I've given her a little gift of having a desk at the house. And so you might see me in front of my camera on my actual desktop a little bit lower quality, but hopefully the conversations that we have aren't lower quality as well. Now, in this episode, I get to sit down with a good friend of mine, Marcellus Williams. Marcellus is a pivotal member in the powerlifting community. He is a member of the PowerliftingNOW crew. He's put out a ton of informational videos on PowerliftingNOW, as well as on his personal YouTube channel, which all of those links are going to be in the description as normal. But in today's episode, we get to outline kind of everything that he's learned throughout his coaching process, mainly how he's been able to scale his roster up to an absurd number, which we'll get into the logistics of in the episode when I talk to him. But he kind of talks about how he was able to go step by step and manage that athlete roster without diminishing the actual quality of the product that he provides. I think that's a very important thing for newer coaches to know, and I definitely learned a lot just in that conversation as well. On top of that, we get to talk about some game day handling strategies and the things that he's learned from coaching his very high level clients to coaching, just at local meets. So it's a very fun and informational conversation that we have. Really excited to get it out to all of you guys. Before we begin, though, I do always have to thank 110% for supporting both me and the podcast. This is a pre-workout that I love. This is a supplement company that I love. This is an owner that I love. Kevin Papa. Could not thank him more for putting myself in that community and allowing me to kind of be a part of everything. If you are looking for a new pre-workout or just want to try something new, I highly suggest ordering one of their flavors. Probably the best tasting pre-workout I've ever had, but also the best working pre-workout I've ever had. On top of that, they provide some sleep supplements, some focus supplements, intra-workout, pump products that are all wonderful. So if you do want to try any of those things, I do have a code. You can use just ROB, R-O-B, at checkout for around 10% off of your entire cart. On top of that, moving forward into August and September, I am taking on more clients. I am putting myself at a little bit of a soft cap as soon as I have about 5 more clients here. And that's just to make sure, kind of like what we talk about in this episode with Marcellus, to make sure that I'm not diminishing the actual quality of the product that I provide to everybody else, every one of my other clients, other athletes. So if you are interested in working with me or just want to learn a little bit more about Escalate, about my coaching philosophy and coaching style, I will have both my athlete inquiry form below as well as my Instagram. You can fill out the form, you can just DM me, whichever is best for you, and then we can move forward and see what it looks like to have you on the team. But without further ado, I am very excited to give you episode 27 of the Escalate podcast. All right, so anybody here that's listening, I appreciate you tuning in. This is episode, I believe, either 27 or 28 of the Escalate podcast. And today we've got Marcellus Williams with me on a Zoom call. And before we even begin, I don't think Marcellus really needs an introduction. He's been in the sport of powerlifting for a while. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably understand who he is. And so before we begin, I do want to just hit you with a straight up question, Marcellus, just for my sake. I want to maybe settle a rumor. Is it still true that you are doing all of your programming on your cell phone?
Yeah, I am. It's funny because if you were to walk in when I'm in my office, you would see blocks and Excel sheets and stuff pulled up on my computer screen. But what it is it's the previous block of the client, and I'm working on the current one on my phone.
That's hilarious. So I know that you talked about this on another podcast. I think it was one on the PowerliftingNOW ones like a while ago. And I think it revolved around you just being able to be around your family a little bit more, right? Like it was easier for you to just kind of sit on the couch and be with your daughter and right training that way rather than, you know, having to, sit at a desk and kind of be away from them. Is that kind of the root cause of it?
No, actually, it's not. That's definitely a benefit. It's definitely been a
Okay.
byproduct of it. But I've been writing programs with my phone since probably like 2018.
That's
Honestly,
crazy.
2018, 2019. My daughter wasn't born until 2022.
Okay.
And I wasn't married till 2019. So it's like
That's
it's
crazy.
yeah, I know. So basically, when I first started, a lot of us, at least from my time, right? When you're writing programs, you're writing stuff like on your phone on a notepad or whatever. But whenever you start using Excel and Google Sheets and stuff, you're doing it from your computer. And that's what I started off doing, just like everybody else. But essentially, when I started doing it from my phone was because when I was first started the online coaching business, and specifically getting more involved in powerlifting, I was still doing full-time personal training at TCU. That's where I was working. So I didn't always necessarily have the time to pull up my computer and get it connected to the Wi-Fi, stuff like that, depending on what I was doing, where I was at. And even just like when I was traveling to meets, it's like, okay, I'm on this plane for 3 hours. I have nothing to do. Like, let me connect to Wi-Fi. And I started doing it with more from my phone just for those special circumstances. But then over time, I'm just like, man, I like this. This is convenient. Like, I can be walking outside, right, at a park, sit on a bench and be like, I'm gonna write a block now and get it done. I can be like, going to the store, like driving to the store, and maybe like, my wife needs to go to the store real quick, and I can just sit there like, okay, cool. I've got free time. I'm gonna write a block. So for me, it really came down to like, wow, I can be productive, and I'm not limited to being productive just in my office. Because I know a lot of people, they're very big on like, I need my office setting, or I need to go to a Starbucks or whatever in order to be able to write. I'm not like that, man. I can lock in mentally wherever I'm at. So just being able to do it from my phone is something where I was doing it at first out of convenience when I was traveling, and then it just became habitual. Also, the fact that I do most of my program writing through Excel and not Google Sheets, I think makes it a little bit easier because Excel on the computer and the phone is pretty much the same. I feel like Google Sheets is really clunky looking on the phone by
Yeah.
comparison. So that's probably why a lot of people are like, bro, how do you do it? I'm like, well, I don't do Google Sheets for one, but yeah, just something that I started doing and then became habitual. And now I'm like, I look at my computer and sometimes I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to turn on some music, in the background. I'm going to pull it up on my computer. I'm going to write it from my computer. I never do. I'm just like, this is stupid. I'm going to do it from my phone.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely one of those people where I don't really need like like I sit at my desk here in right training. I got two monitors. I pull up, old block, new block, or notes, new block, whatever it is, and work through it. But I'm definitely a little bit more on the opposite side of the spectrum of you, where before I do sit down, I do like to, kind of walk around my office, pick things up, maybe wipe down my desk a little bit, provide a
Yeah.
good little environment for myself to be productive. And that's just become a habit for myself during undergrad
Yeah.
as well. That's just what I like to do.
Yeah. That's probably the
Um,
other thing for me too that I forgot to mention is like I hate sitting still. Like
yeah,
period.
there you go.
I like it's funny. I know I was like, oh, get your 10K steps a day. I clear like 20K steps a day easy. I don't even try. I just pace around my house. So like I may start writing a block in my office, and by the time I'm done with that block, I'm in my backyard. And I'm like, how did I get out here? So it's like,
That's funny. I'd love to see how um kind of like how good your fine motor control like skills are, because I know, I mean, like you said, Google Sheets is kind of clunky on a phone. That's why I don't do it. I try not to, at least. I've done it before. I've like written it. I normally do it with attempt sheets. So with attempt sheets, when you go to national meets or regional meets, I mean, I'm going to be honest, like any other coach, I'm writing that thing the night before, man. Like, or even the morning of. Like that's all that's happening. And, uh, and so I'll commonly be at like a national meet. I've got somebody competing the next day. I'm handling somebody. I'm like, all right, they just finished bench. I've got an hour before they deadlift. I'm gonna knock out an attempt sheet real quick. But just trying to like select cells and everything is so hard. I don't know if I have fat fingers, or maybe I need an iPhone Plus, but it's just really really hard for me to do. So I commend you for that. That's very impressive. Um, you had mentioned this is something that is actually pretty interesting that you had mentioned. So you started out doing in-person personal training, correct?
yes,
Yeah. So
yes.
at college at TCU.
Yeah, so I started at UNT.
Okay.
I got certified as a personal trainer in 2015 at UNT, because that was one of the 4 jobs I was doing while I was in college, trying to avoid student debt. So that's where I started. And then when I graduated in 2016, I ended up getting a full-time position as a trainer at TCU.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I wasn't sure where you did your undergrad. Um, okay, cool. So this is something that's always rattled around my head, and I want to maybe get your opinion on it before we dive into some of the topics that we had, originally planned for. Um, I am in the camp definitely that I think, especially with the emergence of online coaching nowadays, and having a lot of newer coaches, which to no like shade to them or anything, only emerge as online coaches. I am wholly in the camp that if you are a younger coach, if you're a newer coach, if you've been doing it for a year to 2 years, you need to find a way to coach in person. I think that the skills and ability to cue people, to communicate, to have and see changes in a session by session basis in person is extremely valuable. And I want to get your opinion on that as well, because you started out like that. I started out like that. And I think it's extremely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about this on the PowerliftingNOW podcast before, actually, like Sean, Matt, Steve, and I, and we all agree completely. I will not go so far as to say you can't be a good coach if you don't start off with some in-person training experience, but I will say you will be heavily limited in what I think your potential and capabilities will be. It's very simple, man. It's like if you don't have the skills, or if you haven't taken the time to develop the skills to be able to evaluate someone's movement, see how they're moving biomechanically, kind of see what's up with their leverages, being able to cue them and knowing not just what that looks like, but even being able to like see like in a 3D image, like what that looks like collectively from different angles, kind of being able to explain to them, hey, what this feels like. If you can't do that in person, how are you going to do it with a video, a 2D image? Just, I don't care if they're sending you all the angles in the world. It's something where you just aren't quite sure what that's going to look like. And I explain this to people too. And it's funny because I'm not trying to give anybody fuel for this. Um, but oftentimes, people be like, oh, yeah, I know this squat looks high, but it's just the angle, right? And oftentimes that's cope. But there is some truth to that with certain people. I've simply learned from working with certain people in person and being able to see what their squat looks like in person. And then I look at what it looks like on the video that they show me. And I'm like, this looks so different than what it does in person, because certain angles can be biased for or against you based upon how you're built. So there is something to that as well. So I definitely think it's one of the things where, I mean, quite frankly, I'm kind of like, why do you want to be an online coach if you've never even done this in person in the first place? I think that's kind of interesting to me in the first place. But also, I would say if you're not going to go get certified as a personal trainer, just like, oh, hey, I'm helping 2 of my friends learn how to squat, bench, and deadlift and work out in the gym. Something. You need some type of background. I think it's going to be very beneficial for you long term.
Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that as well. With different angles showing different things and it being a little bit weird. When I used to coach Alex Kano, I would know, like he'd send me an angle from the side and he's hitting depth. He'd send me an angle from the front and it looks like 4 inches high. And I'm like, what is going on? Like I know this is fine, but the coach in me is like, dude, what are we doing here?
Yeah, right.
But without that in-person training experience that I had from working at like an actual sports performance facility, I would be like, okay, these sets are high, without understanding like, oh, okay, there's different ways that things can be viewed in that kind of 3D spectrum, like you said. So that's pretty cool. And I'm 100% with you. I think that if you are a younger coach and if you do have the ability and the time to coach in person, please go talk to the owner of whatever gym that you train at and be like, hey, if anybody comes in that wants to do any in-person sessions, like I'll do it for this rate or I'll do it for free. Fuck it. Right? I'll do it for free. I'm in the gym 4 hours a day anyways. Like I might as well get something out of it.
Yeah.
So I would definitely think that that's something that a lot of people need, but I don't think it's necessary, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Or if you're an online coach, but a lot of your first few clients are local anyway, train with them in person. Just something. And I would make the argument too that, like I say, even though we're not saying it's absolutely necessary, in a field that nowadays is more oversaturated than ever. I always tell people I think there's more good coaches today than what there's ever been, but it's also more oversaturated than what's ever been. Anything you can do that sets you apart is beneficial. And the fact that, like you said, a lot of these online coaches have no in-person experience, that's going to set you apart further.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving into something that I wanted to mention and what I was originally going to kind of transition into from the phone program in question is kind of your time management skills. So to my knowledge, you have one of the largest rosters as a high level coach. The last time I heard from, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you can, not mention or not, say how many clients you have. If I don't care, if that's not appropriate, I apologize. But the last time that I heard, it's somewhere around like 80 plus.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm wrong there. Okay.
No, that's correct. Yeah, I'm very transparent about it. I work with 80 full powerlifting clients, which comes programming, nutrition, all that, and then I work with 20 nutrition only clients. So I work with about 100 clients in total at once. But the most I've ever worked with is 85 full powerlifting clients, and then like 110 no, my bad. 25 nutrition only clients. So like, 110, 115 in total. And that's technically my true cap, but I only get to that if it's just like, okay, I'm at about 80, but man, I really want to work with this guy. They'll be easy to work with. But typically that's where I'm around 80 for full powerlifting clients and 20 for nutrition only.
Yeah, that's insane. I just want to say that. I don't know how you do it. Obviously I have other responsibilities as I finish my PhD and stuff. I'm putting a hard cap for myself at like 30.
Yeah.
So I'm 50 under you without even taking on nutrition clients. I want to ask, how you were able to build your time, and maybe not build your time management skills, but kind of how you were able to grade yourself up to that point without necessarily sacrificing the quality of the product that you're providing to everybody. Normally when people, open up spots in a fast sense, so say that you're a coach and you're at, maybe around 20 clients and you're like, you know what, I can handle 30. And you're just like, all right, I got 10 spots open. And, if everything goes well, I can fill them this month. 9 times out of 10, those 20 clients now are not getting the same product. And I want to kind of ask how you were able to manage that and build yourself up. Cause I don't assume that you went from 50 to 80 or even went from 60.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So I would say there's, I always, before I ever get into like the gist of how I did it, there's always 3 things I have to say, no matter how many times I've asked this question. I think this context is important. The first one I tell people is everybody has different work capacities for anything we're doing in life. I tell people that even if I tell you exactly how I've gone about this and the structures to use and the protocols to do, it doesn't mean you're going to work with 80 people, because there has to be a certain mental and emotional bandwidth you have to work with that many people while keeping the quality up and then still having a balance with your life, especially in my case with having, a wife, a daughter, my second child on the way, other responsibilities. So I always let people know that, just know what your natural work capacities are. Number 2, I definitely got a lot of practice with balancing a lot of things in college. Like I said, I was taking, 12, 15 hours a semester. I was working 4 jobs. I was dating my now wife, who was then girlfriend. I started powerlifting, in college as well. So I got a lot of practice with balancing different things. And then the third thing, which kind of just goes into more of the direct question, is just the pacing of everything. So for me, when I started the online coaching, it was in 2017, and I was only doing it part-time. So like I said, I was still a full-time trainer at TCU. I let myself get up to, I think, about like 10, no more than 15 clients. And when I finally eventually decided to go into it full-time in like 2018, about halfway to 2018, my first goal was, okay, with all this extra time I have and what I'm doing, I want to get to 30 clients. So I got to 30 clients about the end of 2018, start 2019. And I made sure to hold myself to that. No matter how many inquiries were coming in or stuff like that, I would not let myself go past 30. The only way I was going to take somebody on is if somebody had to stop or I had to drop somebody, something of that nature. So I kept my roster at 30 all the way until 2020. Then in 2020 is when I first expanded, because I was like, okay, everything is really organized. My structure is really well set. And that's something else I need to mention too, is that even when I was doing it part-time, because I think where a lot of coaches mess up is they're pretty free-flowing with their structure, their communication, their response, because it's like, oh, I'm only working with 5 to 10 people. It's easy to keep that managed with no real structure, right? But from the moment I started online coaching, even as a side business, I had an actual professional structure. Here are the check-in times, like with my clients, and make sure everything's written down. Here's what the agreement is for communication and response. Here's how I want you to send me your videos. Here's how I'm giving feedback. Everything was very well structured, as though it is a full-time job already. Because I think a lot of coaches are good coaches as far as the programming, the technique, all that, but they're not good at business. And it's like, if you work a normal 9 to 5, your boss doesn't just go, okay, here's all these files, good luck. Everything has a structure. Everything has a way it's supposed to be. This is due by this time. You do this much work on this day, this much work on this day. You do this from, 9 to 3, this from 3 to 5. So I approached it that way from the start. So that definitely helped to build it up. But basically in 2020, I first expanded my roster. And I decided, okay, you know what? I think I want to get to 50 clients. But instead of just going through my email, like, cool, there's several inquiries here. Let me just start taking people on. What I did was I took on 10 at the first start of the year, and I maintained that 40 cap from January all the way to about June, July. And once I was sure I was good on that, then I took on another 10 and maintained that to 50 all the way to the end. And the fact that, funnily enough, it's funny because 2020 I was dealing with the shutdowns and stuff like that, but that actually kind of, for me, worked out to my favor because I didn't lose any clients during that time. And because I have a background in calisthenics, I don't work out, I was able to get people stuff to do. But it also allowed me to have all this extra time to really just refine how I'm taking people on, how I'm onboarding. That's another thing too. Even though let's say I take on like 10 clients to start, I wouldn't start all 10 in the same week. I would look at like, okay, how many clients are on their final week of the block this week? Okay, like, oh, there's like 8 people here. Cool. I'll start one on this week. I'll start one the next week. I'll start one 2 weeks after that. So that way I'm keeping a balance of how many blocks I have to write for that week, how many people I'll be in contact for that week, how many people be sending me their highest exertion stuff on the same week. So I went about it that way. Then in 2021, I did the same thing. I expanded to 60. I took on 5 at the start of the year. So I was at 55, and I kept that halfway through the year. Then halfway through the year when I was like, cool, I'm good to go. Took on another 5 and maintained that through the rest of 2021. And on top of doing that, I was super selective with who I took on. And if people weren't adhering to what was laid out, I'm not going to wait around for months for you to start adhering. If you're messing all this stuff up in the first 2 or 3 blocks, that lets me know, okay, I'm going to be chasing you down for your videos, getting you to fill your sheet out. And that's going to take away the quality away from my other clients. So I was super selective. So I did it that way. Then in 2022, same thing. I expanded it to 70. Took on 5 the first half of the year, 5 the second half of the year. And I actually thought that was where my cap was going to be because that's when my daughter was born, right? And obviously that was a transition, getting used to being a dad and stuff like that. But it was one of those things where, my wife and I got a really good system going. We got to have good balance going. And once again, because of the structure that I have, because of the fact I was being selected, and the fact that the longer you work with someone, that's something I tell people, retention is huge. I still have clients to this day that I've been working with since 2018. When you've worked with someone for that long and have such a smooth groove with them, it's easier, right? And therefore, like the amount of energy that maybe you had to put towards them when they were brand new, it changes, right? So by the end of 2022, I was like, wow, I'm still have time. I can handle a little bit more. So I'm like, okay, let's see how 80 goes. So I did that in 2023, and that worked really, really well. And then 2024 is when I'm like, okay, let's do 85. Let's see what happens with that. And that's when I was like, okay, this is my cap. This is the amount of people I can work with where I can keep the quality of the service. I can get back to everyone on time. Still never been late on blocks. Still have time for my family, do everything I need to do. And I'm like, if I do any more than this, I'm going to kill myself. So that's where I felt my balance. And like I said, it wasn't a thing where I ever planned to get to that many clients. It was more so, let's just steadily bring on a few at a time until we find what that natural capacity is. And once you find that, what that's 30, 50, 60, whatever, cool. That's where you chill out. That's where you stop. And that's what it ended up being for me, was that many. And then, like I said, on the nutrition front, around like 20 nutrition clients. So around 100 clients in total is what I can handle.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I mean, it's really funny when you went into full-time 2020, that's the year that I started part-time. So yeah. It's very funny. I see myself going through almost like a 1-to-1 on a much smaller scale, obviously, but like a 1-to-1 thing with you. I will say though, I wish that I would have that knowledge that you just put out there in 2020. So I really appreciate you laying all of that out in detail. I am, the first to say that right now I believe that I'm doing the best coaching that I've ever done. Pull myself back a year and a half from today, I was probably doing the worst coaching I have ever done. I overextended myself. I did all the things that you just told everybody not to do. And I had to learn from that experience in firsthand. I wasn't able to provide a quality product for my clients because I was, balancing a part-time job, finishing grad school, being a full-time PhD student. And then also, I think I put myself upwards of like 34 clients.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just not, I got to the point where it wasn't feasible and people were leaving. And so I'm truthful in the sense that I will say that I at one point was a very, very bad coach, at least on the communication and adherence side of things. And I'm hoping that anybody listening to this can kind of take my, hey, don't do it that way experience and your, hey, this is the way to do it experience, and build yourself up like that, because that's what I'm doing now. And it has never been easier.
Yes.
It seems so like thoughtless in a way. Like I'm just like, all right, cool. Every month I put out a little story. I'm like, hey, I've got, 2 to 3 spots. And, if people sign up, then like you said, I see which weeks would be best to put them on, because I think as coaches, we have all gotten to that week of the month where you sit there and you go, oh, dude, I've got like 25 blocks to write, right? Like it's like this just enormous amount of work. You're like, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. Somehow everybody's timelines lined up at once. And now like I'm cooked, like I'm destroyed.
It's so funny you say that, because this week literally is like my 25 block writing week that I've had this week exactly.
It's so you get on Monday and you're just like, this is going to be a grind. But hopefully, people that are listening to this will be able to grade themselves upwards in the amount of people that they're able to take on, given the knowledge that you just gave them. So I appreciate you, saying that. Now, moving into kind of, you mentioned that there was a time at about 85 that you felt like that was your big cap. Did you have any sort of like, what were the things that kind of told you that? Was it just the amount of time that you were spending and you realized like maybe, like for example, my wife was one of the first people that told me, we were dating at the time, we recently just got married, but my wife was one of the people that just told me like, or that told me at the time, like, hey, you need to like chill the fuck out, because like you don't have time for your clients. And guess what? You also don't have time for me right now. So get your shit together, buddy, or else I'm out of here. And as harsh as that sounds, it was one of the biggest eye openers for me. Was it some sort of extrinsic motivation in a way? Or did you kind of find yourself just saying like, wow, this is a ton of work and I really need to just kind of pull it back a little bit?
Yeah. So for me, because in terms of the actual total amount of work, there's really not a huge difference between when I'm at 80 versus 85. Mm-hmm. It's more for me that when I knew that 85 was the true cap is, and this is where knowing yourself and knowing yourself from a personality perspective, I think is so important. I think it's so underrated that coaches, because if the better you know your personality, the better you know your habits and stuff like that, the better you can match yourself with certain clientele. Maybe you're a coach like me where you can work well with a variety of clients and backgrounds. Maybe you're somebody where you'll thrive if you find a specific personality type and only work with that. So I know I'm the type of person where if I like to call like below E, I can't necessarily tell, not immediately, because the quality of my work won't change, because the quality of my work to me is more about, it's more of a discipline thing. And it's more a matter of when I first got involved. Well, when I first got involved in personal training, it's funny because I used to be like, personal training is a scam. And then I'm like, oh, actually it can be done the right way. Same with online coaching. I'm like, oh, online coaching is a scam. And I'm like, oh, it can be done the right way. So I told myself when I first started this, I told my wife, back then girlfriend, now wife, I was like, I want to do this the right way with keeping my values and my ethics intact. And if I can't, then I don't want to do this anymore. So for me, and this isn't to shame anybody where this has happened. I mean, like you yourself admit, hey, I've made mistakes, but I came back better. It's all about learning, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, I told myself, I will never let it be an option where I didn't get back to a client within the 24 hours agreed upon, or I will never let myself be lay on the block. And by the grace of God, and all this time, I've still done that. And that word of mouth has helped me grow my business. But what I found for me when I got to that point was it's like, okay, cool. My clients are good. The quality of service is where it needs to be. Awesome. Hey, my daughter's still taken care of. She's getting all the love and attention and engagement she needs. Hey, my wife is good. She's happy with everything. But it'd just be this thing where I would have these moments where I'm like, I'm not good though. Because I'm at this point where even when I'm not working, even when I'm just sitting and chilling and trying to just chill and be involved in the moment, in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking about I have this many DMs to get back to when I leave this event. I have this many blocks to. I have this much to do. And I'm up, and for me, I'm like, okay, well, that's what I feel at this point. And even though I'm keeping the quality up, that lets me know any more than that. That's when I might tip over the edge. That might be when it's like, okay, if I do this, I will be late on the block, or I won't get back to a client on time. And it's funny because despite the amount of clients I worked with, I didn't have official office hours until last year. That's when I incorporated it because I like the free flow of like, okay, hey, I'll get back to you guys in the 24 hours and that can be anytime, right? But it'd be a thing where sometimes like maybe my daughter wakes up in the middle of the night, it's 2 a.m. I go and I put her back to bed and I see that someone messaged me like maybe like at midnight after I went to bed. I'm like, I'm up now. I'm going to get back to it now, right? My wife actually keeps this picture where it's me putting my baby girl to sleep and I'm responding to a client like on the phone, right? And that was fine. I was like, hey, it's fine. It's working well. Everything's a smooth flow. But the final straw for me was I want to say like May or June of last year. I had just competed at the Lone Star Classic. And the next day we all had decided to go to the lake with a few friends who would all compete and stuff like that. So because it was Saturday, I got back to about half the messages that were sent that day because I was competing, obviously. And then I was like, cool, I'll get back to the rest of these messages tomorrow within the 24 hours and be good to go. Well, then everyone on Sunday morning said, hey, let's all go out to the lake. Everyone's in town from the meet. Let's go to the lake. So have a good time. So I went, did that. And even though I'm having fun enjoying it, in the back of my mind, instead of just enjoying the lake with everyone, I'm thinking like, oh, I got to get back to these messages. I have till this time to get back to everyone in the past 24 hours. So at one point, I'm like, all right, guys, I'll be back. I go get in my car. I'm in the car for like an hour, catching up on these messages. And when I'm done, I got back to everyone. I was very thorough with the feedback. But when I'm done, I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I just spent an hour in my car watching my friends and family have a good time at the lake while I'm catching up on messages. And I thought about the fact that I'm like, it's a Sunday. I'm like, I don't have an off day. I work every day. I do have vacation weeks at this point, but even on my vacation weeks, I'm still at least writing blocks typically, right? So that's when I was like, okay, something has to change because it's not the quality of work is going down, but my enjoyment of what I'm doing is going down. It truly does feel like I did this because I'm supposed to do it, not necessarily because I want to do it. So that's when I'm like, you know what? Steve works with like 20, 30 clients. He has office hours. Matt has office hours. All these people have office hours, right? So that's when I incorporated office hours for myself. And it was a game changer for me because one, the enjoyment came back because now the fact that when I wake up in the morning, I know that, cool, I'm not going to start seeing videos come in till this time. I enjoy my mornings. I can spend my mornings with my family. I can kind of get myself mentally wired. And the fact that I know, hey, cool, once this time hits at the day, videos are done coming in for the day, it makes me far more engaged and proactive during my office hours. And then when it's done, I can just fully detach. It's no longer a thing where, because before I can make the argument like, okay, hey, I can choose to mentally cut off at a certain time. But if I still see the videos coming in, I want to get back to them. That's the way I've wired myself over these years. So now the fact that, cool, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, that's when videos are coming in. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, Sundays are my off day. That's just my day with my family. If I want to write blocks on Sunday, I can, but there's no client engagement that day. And that's been a huge game changer for me because the quality of work, I feel like even though I didn't drop the ball, it's just better. I'm just more engaging. I enjoy it more. I think, the quality of my family is definitely better. And I have time for myself now. I have time where if I just want to go sit on the backyard porch and just be for 30 minutes, for an hour, I can do that. And that is incredibly underrated if you take care of yourself, you can better take care of everyone else around you,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was about a year ago. I started incorporating office hours as well. So mine are a little bit longer. I go 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Just because my wife right now is working ER rotation shifts at A&M's vet school. So it's like she's not home till 9 p.m. anyways. And so, that's generally my workflow. But much like yourself, I found enjoyment again. I was like, wow, this is super nice. Like I wake up and I allow my clients to still send me stuff. So I have all of my communication housed within Discord. And so, there's a channel for mass communication, announcements, general chats, etc. And then each client has their own individual text channel that we have with just me and the client, me and the athlete. and I still allow them to send me stuff, outside of that. Personally, for me, that's just more of a thing of the stuff that I've learned throughout, kind of the cognitive neuroscience stuff that I do. So, fun fact, your ability to rate subjective workload past 12 hours decreases about 50%. So if you wait 12 hours to tell me how a set went from the previous day, you are probably about 50% as accurate. And I'm not a huge fan of that. Some people are really good with it. Most average people are not. So I tell my clients to just send me it whenever, but I put a block on Discord from sending me notifications at 7 p.m. So after 7 p.m. until the next day, nothing is hitting my phone at all. And then I try to do most of it actually. And the reason why I moved towards Discord is because there's a desktop app. So I can sit down at a desk and actually treat this like, I don't know, like a real job, right? Like a desk job that people clock in for, and respond to everybody that way. And so that's kind of been my strategy, very similar to yours, Marcellus, but just a little bit different. And I think that it's important that people don't take the things that you and I are saying as just like, this is what I need to do. Like this,
Yes.
I need to be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. because that's what Marcellus does. Or I need to take, a week of vacation off or 2 weeks. Do it, please. But like, don't just implement these things because we're doing it. Try out different ways, and then talk to your clients about it and see how they are responding to it.
Exactly.
One of the things that you had mentioned earlier that I also wanted to talk about was kind of your guidelines for communication. So within my onboarding process, I have started to tell everybody that I talk to, when we get to the logistics of like my coaching strategies and the product and all that kind of stuff, when we get to the logistics of communication, the first thing that I say is that communication is a two-lane road or a two-way road. You have expectations of me as a coach.
Yes.
Obviously, within the 24-hour response period, making sure that the feedback is quality and not just a looks good, bro, thumbs up response, which is a good thing sometimes to send people, but not all the time. And that, they get all of the other things that they're expecting, the blocks on time, the block intro video, if you do those kind of things, like all of those different things, handling, attempts, weight cuts, all that stuff. However, I also tell them that I expect certain things from my clients. And some of those things are obviously the, sets being sent with a good description and a weight and an RPE added into the text. Crazy thing to send with, right? And two, that it's just sent within a 24-hour period. And I actually have a rule with a lot of my clients that if you send me something that's more than 24 hours ago, I'm not responding to.
Yes. I not only do I have that rule, I incorporate this office, but it's basically you're not allowed to send me anything.
Yeah.
Once it's past that point. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, because like you said, if I get 15 videos from a client on a Friday, it's going to take me 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to look through those from Monday to Friday. And one, the quality of that feedback is now going down because there's not this intercession feedback where they can implement any technique changes or cues. Yeah. But two, now you're taking time away from other clients. And that's what really irks me is like, if I'm taking 30 to 45 minutes to respond to you, there might be a client that is taking their week 4, primary deadlift at that same time. And I'm not able to respond to them. I always tell people I do not have on-call services, do not expect on-call services, but there's those rare times where I'm able to just respond immediately. And so, I really appreciate you lining that up too. And
it's important.
I think it's super beneficial.
It's I would say, because a lot of what we talked about, like you said before, like, hey, we're saying do this, but how you go about it is up to you, right? Like the structure of your office hours, and that can change over time. I used to only have 2 vacay weeks throughout the year. After my daughter was born, now I take 4. I used to not have office hours, and that was totally fine. I was structured office hours, but there are certain things that I think are an absolute necessity for every coach. I think it's a non-negotiable that you should have consultation calls with clients. I don't think just a questionnaire is enough. I think you should have a consultation call after that. And a big part of that, of course, you talk about what you offer with the service, how you do things programming-wise, but a big part of that has to be the expectations part. Not just what you can expect from me, but what I can expect from you. Like a lot of these coaches that I mentor this mentorship that I'm doing, I'd let them know, hey, when you have a consultation call, yes, you're quote unquote selling yourself to the client, but it's also the time when the client needs to be selling themselves to you. So you need to have certain things that you have expectations on, certain questions that you have for them, so you can make sure that you're going to get everything you need out of this client. Because if you don't do that, if you're not clear with what the expectations are, one, you can't be mad at the client when they aren't following those things. You weren't clear on it. And two, it can lead to you developing a certain sense of resentment, not just towards the client, but towards the field as a whole. Because let's say you spent an extra hour working through stuff with this client because you didn't like make the guidelines clear. And then another client hits you up with a very valid problem, but now you're in a bad headspace. And you're not going to respond to that problem with the right type of energy. So it's very important. And once again, this is true of any business. I think one of the biggest issues with powerlifting coaches is that we don't treat it like any other business. Like if you work a 9 to 5, your employer has certain expectations of you and you have certain expectations of them, your boss, right? There's a certain two-way streak. Your manager can't just talk to you any type of way. You can't just talk to him any type of way, right? Your manager can't just dump last minute. Well, in some cases, I guess they can, but usually can't just dump last minute assignments on you. Like, hey, you got to stay an extra 2 hours, right? Like there's checks and balances essentially. So it's important to have that in coaching.
Yeah, I think any of my clients that are accountants, lawyers, and like investment bankers, that last thing that you said, where it's like they can't just dump stuff on you. They're gonna look at you and be like, okay, buddy. Awesome, dude. Well, I'm going to transition a little bit into a different topic. This is one that I actually am really, really excited to talk about. So within your pool of around 80 clients, how many would you say you would, I mean, obviously you don't want to dog anybody, but you know, how many of those 80 clients and clients that you've worked with as a whole that maybe you don't work with anymore, have you been able to work with on a national and international stage? Just give me a rough number. It doesn't have to be exact.
That's tough. I've probably worked with over 300 or 400 individuals at this point. I'm gonna say, yeah, at least 100 plus of them have gotten to the national level.
Okay, and we'll say maybe 25% of that, or 25 to 40 is podiuming, and they're going to worlds and all of that kind of stuff. So we're looking at 25 to 40 lifters. We're looking at 10%. Essentially at the highest base. We're looking at around 10% of your client base that you've worked with that is high level international national competitors. Now, with that being said, do you think that you've learned more about powerlifting from that 10% or from the 90%?
I would say it depends on what aspect of powerlifting we're talking about.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say so. So if we're talking about from the standpoint of being able to work around specific type of life circumstances and basically being able to have the confidence that, hey, I don't care what someone's circumstances are, how busy their lifestyle is, I can program for anyone. That's definitely from the 90%, because I've worked with such a wide variety of people. Nurses, police officers, firefighters, people who travel for work, things like that, right? If we're talking about from a game day handling perspective, what I think is maximize my ability to game day handle across all levels, it's going to be the 10%, because you're probably more often not going to run into more challenges and scenarios that require you to be a sharper game day handler with that 10% at the national or international level for sure. Programming wise, it's definitely pretty equal across the board, because I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that, well, I definitely don't subscribe to the idea that like higher level lifters, stronger lifters have to have more different type of advanced programming. I feel like the way you approach someone's programming is more so just based upon what that individual circumstances are. I like to use Ashton Ruska and Bob Matthews as an example. A lot of what I did with Bob is very direct, straightforward stuff that I would do with any other client, like even an intermediate level client, because Bob has the lifestyle and the habits and the capacity to be able to handle those same things, even at those higher threshold loads. Whereas the way I go about doing things for Ashton is unlike anybody else. And it changes almost on a training cycle basis, because his lifestyle kind of demands that it does so, right? So I have other intermediate lifters where, because of their lifestyle, if they're not like crazy strong, the things I have to do with them programming wise is very unique. It's very nuanced. It's more advanced, if you will, right? Then I have other intermediate clients where I can do more direct, straightforward stuff. So it's definitely a balance. And I would say like what I've learned more from or who I've learned more from depends on what the actual circumstances are.
Gotcha. I appreciate that answer, man. And this kind of came about from, I talked to you about it before we started recording. This came about from a clip that I saw from one of the Reformance guys. I think it was like their whole podcast. It was I think Kedrick, and Emil Krustov was also on that episode, and they posted a clip of it where essentially they were giving like these hot takes. And Kedrick's hot take was that there is nothing special about high level, like, okay, maybe not nothing special, but that high level international athletes are not special. And he kind of went to explain that one of the only reasons, again, barring genetic differences, all those kind of things, one of the only reasons that international level lifters are international level lifters are because their coaches figured out their programming and they have stayed relatively injury free. It's those two things. And when you think about it, that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to a coach that understands how to program for the individual and that they're able to, reach these threshold, super threshold loads, once or twice a macro cycle, and stay relatively injury free. And, I've worked with a much, much smaller amount of national, international level lifters. I've had, one or two people compete on that stage and a couple people, podium at nationals. But I am in complete agreement with them to that point where it's like, I don't see this, high level client or this international level client as somebody, much like you said, that needs this advanced programming. 9 times out of 10, the people that I work with that are super high level, it's actually the easiest to program them more than anybody else because it's so damn predictable.
Exactly.
It's like I open their sheet and I'm able to write their block in like 30 minutes. Because I'm just like, all right, I know that we need to move from sets of 4 to sets of 3, and I know that we need to make sure that he hits like 85% on his last secondary day before his last primary day to feel good. So let's just see what the last block did. He squatted 2 or he benched 200 kilos here. So that, 80% or 85% is, somewhere around like 160 to 170. Oh, he just benched 205 now. So it's now like 170, 175. It's just changing those kind of things versus I don't want to say lower level client, but somebody that just isn't on that same competitive scale. There's a bunch of different things that I'm trying to work through. Okay, squat isn't going well. Why isn't squat going well? Is it a volume thing? Oh no, their legs feel fine. They just feel like the bar is really heavy on the back. Okay, let's raise intensity. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, let's add a set. It's all of these different kind of strategies that I use that I'm sure you've done as well. But I'm in complete agreement, right? To kind of put a TLDR on that rant. I don't think that there's anything necessarily special about these higher level clients. It's easier to program them and they just stay injury free, right? And they work really, really hard. I think that's the last thing that I want to talk about on this rant is that they work hard. I talked about this with Sean on the podcast I did with him, the episode prior to this one. You take every single international level client, I guarantee you none of them have missed an accessory for the past 3 years. Because guess what? That's just what they know works. Like they know that if they work that hard and if they put in the work time after time, day after day, they're going to make progress. So, that's my little rant. I don't know if you have any opinions on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very big and I tell people when it comes to sports or physical endeavors, right, your top end potential, if you will, is set the day you're born by your genetics. But how much of that potential you fulfill is going to come down to you doing the right things more often than not. So like you said, if your coach has your programming figured out and you have consistency, predictability, that's huge. If you're on top of your eating, your sleep, that's huge. If you don't skip your accessories, that's huge. If you have the mentality of, hey, I'm going to get this done no matter what, that's huge, right? And I say that not in a discouraging way of like, oh, no matter how hard you work, if your genetics, blah, blah, because quite frankly, most powerlifters don't even stick with the sport long enough to see what their potential could even be. That's what I tell. I'm like, people are like, well, I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm like, I don't care. If you haven't done it for at least 10, I don't care. You can't tell me that you're capped out. You don't know. You just don't know. There's so much that changes with life circumstances and this and that. And sometimes we know this. The stronger lifter doesn't always win on the day. Sometimes just the one who executes better, who makes the better calls, the one who's consistent and stuck with it and who didn't get hurt. So I think Kendrick's exact words were The only difference between them is who their parents are and that they don't get hurt or something.
Yeah,
Like
there we
that.
go.
That's how we put it. And it's just like, yeah, that's a big part of it. It's like, obviously there's lots of different circumstances and different personality types, right? Like, Ash is very different from Petrie, Peach very different from Bob's very different from Jamar, so on and so forth. But one thing that they all have in common is that work ethic. Like if I tell them, hey, this is what you need to do to be the best or to get to the next level, like, boom, there's no argument, there's no debate, there's no excuses. They're going to get it done, right? So I definitely think it's one of these things where when it comes to the idea that, oh, they're so much stronger, there must be some super nuanced advanced programming. It's like, well, maybe for some of them, if they have, like I said, like Ashton with the circumstances, but for the rest of them, it's like, no, it's the fact that we spent enough time to figure out what works for them. And now we can rinse and repeat that over and over and get those consistent results that we want. And because they're able to do that, that's why they're able to build that type of momentum, right? That doesn't mean to say that, if you find that for yourself, that you're going to suddenly become the number one in your weight class, because maybe that's just not what your capacity is at currently, but you'll get a lot further than you would otherwise. So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Bob, Ashton, Petrie, all of these very high level clients, you had mentioned that you have learned more about game day handling from the kind of having to be at primetime, having to be at Worlds, handling for them on the day, than the lower level clients. And that doesn't surprise me at all. Obviously the stakes are higher, all of those kind of things. If you were to give, if you have maybe like 2 or 3 things that you think are kind of the biggest things that you've learned from your experiences there that you can share with any other coaches or any other athletes in general, so that they can then tell their coaches or their handlers through those experiences, what do you think those would be?
Yeah. So I think, man, there's a lot. If I had to try to narrow it down to just 3, one is to have full trust in your plan and have a plan that is, yes, adaptable to the circumstances of the day, right? Like, you shouldn't go in there with just one number in your mind for your attempts. You should have 3 options for your third attempts, 2, 3 options for your second attempts, of course. Have a plan that's adaptable, but don't deviate away from it just because circumstances start changing early. I'm very big on stick to what your plan is for squat, stick to what your plan is for bench. You can start playing the game a little bit more on deadlift if you need to, right? Because I've seen so very often where maybe someone you're competing against, they miss a squat, right? And you squat after them, or like you see like they already missed a second squat, you take your second squat, you decide, man, they missed, so I'm gonna get this extra advantage over them and just go 2.5, 5 kg over what the plan 3A was. Don't do that. If they're missing, they're already messing up their day. You have your day. Because if you go extra and then you miss as well, you just lost that advantage that you had, right? So having a plan that's adaptable, but knowing when to stick to it and knowing when it's actually appropriate to adjust is very important. The second thing that I would say is, even though you can't change how strong your opponent is or isn't, it is very important to actually, if you're able to, do some type of scouting with your competition. You need to know kind of being able to predict what they can do based on how things are moving, right? There's been lots of times where even if someone's kind of, maybe they hype their trainer or something like that, because I at least know what their relative speed looks like, and I've been able to look up their database history and see what they hit and what type of jumps they make. It lets me kind of know, okay, yeah, they're opening everything than us, but I'm not going to freak out about that. I know we make bigger jumps from attempts than they do, right? So actually taking the time to study your competition from the coaching standpoint is important. And I actually think that's something that's more important for the coach to do, because you don't want your lifter thinking about stuff like that on the day. So I think taking the time to do that is huge. And then thirdly, I would say is, do not allow yourself to get overwhelmed, right? It's very easy. And even not like at the national level, if you're doing something where it's like your lifters competing for first place at a local meet, maybe it's like a $500 cash prize, whatever it may be. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and to think like, to put so much pressure on like, okay, I have to do this or I have to do that. It's like, hey, it's an SBD day without back down volume, right? Like, you've seen your clients' videos over and over again. You know what their warm-ups move like. You know what their top sets look like. Trust the fact that you've watched this person do this over and over again. Don't freak out. Don't force things. Don't lowball do it. Just like, okay, I think this is the number. Cool. Does your client agree? Do they think they have the number? Cool. Put it in. That's it. I think sometimes people they'll talk themselves out of their gut instincts, essentially. And it's like, if you're actually a decent coach and you actually pay attention to the feedback and the footage, your gut instincts probably correct 9 times out of 10. I think some of the few times early in my career where I made mistakes with making certain calls because I just didn't go with my initial gut reaction on what to put on the bar. And that can be costly, right? So I think those would be 3 things. Like I said, there's a lot I could go into, but those are 3 very big things I think that I've learned from doing it at that higher level. Because once again, it seems like there's a greater cost with it. And when you're able to take that mentality and apply it to any meet you handle at, you're just getting good practice all around. That's one thing that's definitely shifted my mentality earlier in my career. I'd say probably all the way through 2021, 2022. I brought a certain different level of almost intensity or focus as a coach to like higher level meets. But now I'm approaching everything the same. It all matters. It's all high level in my mind because at the end of the day, even if this person is never going to go to Worlds, they spent months putting time into this. They've spent months of payment for this day to go well. I'm going to treat this like this is their Worlds. I'm going to have the same intentionality and the same focus. And on the flip side of that, when I'm at Nationals or Worlds or Sheffield, I'm not going to look at it as like, oh my God, this is Sheffield. It's like, nope, this is just another day in the office, another day to work. I'm going to make the calls. We're going to have a good day. We're going to have fun. Because the other thing too is like, even as the coach, you got to have fun. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. To kind of piggyback on that, in the first point, there's a very, very funny video that, so I recently got into golf over the past like year and a half. I'm addicted to it. Like, it's just one of those things that, I've talked to like Steve and Brad, and I'm like, we got to have some sort of, golfing coaches, like meet kind of thing go on at Nationals or whatever it be. So I've been completely addicted, and golf is one of those, it's extremely mentally taxing if you're playing poorly. And there's a really funny video of a content creator called Fat Perez, and he talks about kind of how you should handle yourself on the golf course. And the thing that he says is you need to come in and you need to dance with the girl that you came with. Meaning, if you're on the tee box and your driver is just not going well, like you're slicing your driver, you're hooking your driver, and you're just not finding a fairway, hey, maybe don't hit your driver for the rest of the round. Hit a club that you're confident with. And I think to that first point of trusting the plan, it's, hey, yeah, your competition may have missed their second squat, so now they're retaking it. Yeah, maybe you could take 2.5 more, but guess what? You need to still go in, you need to dance with the girl you came with because you tapered in a specific way. The block was written in a specific way to have this be your threshold. Okay, maybe instead of, taking the realistic thing that you thought, maybe, okay, yeah, jump to the reach if you really feel like it's there. But don't go above that reach attempt. Don't go above that plan A. And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is more so a question. So with all of, obviously we talked about online coaching as a whole, and kind of how online coaches can become better in their systems and their in-person work and how that can relate to things. With you having clients that are obviously outside of the DFW area or outside of Texas or outside of the nation, you are not able to be there one-on-one in person, right? At their meets. You're not able to travel to every single one of your clients' meets. We would love for that to happen, but with 80 plus clients, that would be a heinous work schedule for you.
I've tried it. It doesn't work great.
Yeah, no.
It was like two years ago. I was out of town 2 to 3 times every month. It was awful.
Yeah, no way. What are some of the things that you have done as a coach communicating with your clients' handlers? So normally I'll ask, my client, like, hey, can you send me your handler's number? I would love to be able to, walk through some of the stuff. What are some of the things that you have communicated with that handler that you think every single coach should be doing to make sure that their clients that are, outside of their reach, not able to do one-on-one handling with, are still having the best day possible?
Yeah. So of course, the first thing is, if possible, when we're doing the game plan call with the client, if the handler can be on there, I love that. If they can't be, then once the call is done, I will send the plan to the handler and I'll walk through every single thing that we talked about in the call. So not just, hey, here's the plan, but also, hey, here's the plan. Here are the goals. Like, hey, their main priority is PR in the total. Their second priority is placing. Their third priority is if they can hit this specific PR in this specific lift, right? Letting know what the priorities are. Sending training footage to them. Like, hey, here's the highest exertion list we hit. here's their last warm-ups, right? And then setting specific notes for each lift. Hey, here's what you need to look out for their squat from a technical perspective. If this is off, this is the only cue you need to give them. Don't over cue them. Don't change stuff. Here's the only cue you need to give them. Hey, you need to know that when it comes to bench, hey, their opener is going to move this way, but then their second will always move better. Like, trust that. Don't freak out about it, right? Like, you don't want to give them information overload. You can't basically make them the coach in just a week or whatever, but give them the main things that you know are very likely going to pop up on meet day for each lift. And then I think this is very underrated, just letting them know what the mentality of the lifter is like. Hey, he likes to be hyped up this way. Hey, he prefers to stay calm and for you just to talk to him calmly and do this and that. Kind of giving them like an idea of like, hey, this is what the personality of the lifter is like, so they can be ready for that. And so that way, to whatever degree they can, right? Because obviously the handler has their own personality. They can basically like, try to appeal to the way that the lifter is from a mental perspective. I think that's very, very important. And then beyond that, like beyond the base of like, hey, here's the plan, here's how to hype them up and stuff like that, just keep, and as best as they're able to say, hey, keep me posted after each discipline, right? You don't have to hit me up after every single squat attempt, because obviously I can't be there to do anything for you guys as far as that unless I'm watching the live stream. But when the squats are done, let me know how everything went. How is the person feeling? Let me know how everything's going with hydration and eating. So that way, depending on how the squats went, I can tell for sure, hey, I don't care how they're feeling, what they're thinking, 3B, that's what you're going for. Don't go for any more than that. If it flies, I don't care. Don't go for any more than that. And then the last part I would say is covering those what if scenarios, because they happen, right? It's like, okay, hey, I know this is the plan, but what if their second moves in such a way where I don't think 3C is there? You should approach that, because I think sometimes with coaches, we can maybe get so caught up in expecting everything to go well that, oh yeah, worst case, take 3C. Well, what if they can't even manage that? Have you covered that? Because what if it's a thing where the handler thinks, oh, I'm not allowed to go lower than 3C because that's the lowest he gave me, right? So you need to cover those what if scenarios, right? Or hey, if it's they take 2.5 more over 3A on their deadlift for placing, they've already PR'd their total by the second pull, are you okay with that? Like if you go over all the what if scenarios with your client, those are the same things you should go over with the handler as well. So they can be as equipped as possible to know, okay, cool. In this scenario, this is what Marcellus would do. So that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome, dude. Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end it. I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, I don't think you needed any introduction, but if you do want to plug anything regarding PL Now or other stuff that you've been, looking forward to announcing or anything like that, I'd love to be able to allow you to do so. And I'll go ahead and kind of have all of those things in the description of the podcast as well.
You guys can follow me on Instagram at the Swolefessor. If you want free informative content, you can follow me on YouTube, the Swolefessor, just one word. Also can follow me in the coach collaboration of the Powerlifters Library on PowerliftingNOW at PowerliftingNOW.com, as well as on Instagram at PowerliftingNOW. And if you are interested in just mentorship, so if you're not a client, but maybe you want me to evaluate your programming, your technique, or if you're a coach wanting me to help you grow your own business, I also offer mentorship. You can just click the mentorship highlight on my Instagram to get information on that. And yeah, that's it, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, all of those links will be in the description below. And so if you've gotten to this point as a listener, I appreciate you. And as always, continue climbing.